Ah, school. Those are the best days of your life, all the adults used to say. But I never really bought into that all those years ago. Like, what's they know with their ability to drive, own a house, go to nightclubs, stay up late, do the business, get into relationships, debt, depression, multiple heartbreaks, worry about suspicious lumps, accumulate grief over a lifetime of watching family and friends drop until they drop themselves, and standing brave in the face of an empty existence. Oh no, wait. I see it now. Okay, so with hindsight, school wasn't all that bad. I'd certainly take the stress of chatting up a girl if somebody could come take away my existential dread, faulty sleeping pattern, and that period in the morning where I catch myself in the mirror and think, how am I this old? And school certainly gives you your fair share of funny stories, that's for sure. And here's some more. But before we jump into things, I want to take a quick second to thank the sponsor of this video, Mech Arena. Mech Arena is a tactical team-based 5v5 multiplayer shooter that has Bants. It hits a great balance of casual fun and skill-based competitive play, so if you're like me and get hit with intermittent waves of murderous intent towards mechs, because who doesn't, then this is the game for you. With a huge amount of mechs and weapons, you can customize your loadout to suit your particular swagger, from a big beefy tank with a couple of cheeky little rocket launchers, a nimble one-armed ninja with a 50 cal that's painted green, because me, or a shielded chap dual-wielding lasers of death. There's a ton of different game modes you can play solo or with your mates, from point capture to team deathmatch, as well as tournaments and special events, all taking place on a nice variety of levels, from frozen tundras where you can freeze your ball bearings off, to a peaceful Japanese town, each with different routes you can take, so some thought was actually put into them, and they look surprisingly good. In fact, between the graphics and the art style, this whole game looks really good for a mobile game. Mech Arena is gearing up for its official worldwide release in August, but if you're in the US, Canada, the UK, or any other lucky country that may be on the list, you can start right now. It's completely free to play on Android and iOS, and when you do, use my link and you can get 1 gold crate, 15,000 credits, and 200 A-coins, so you can have a head start on everyone else, so don't miss out. Links in the description. So Mr. Crotty was a teacher we had for science class. He was an incredibly intellectual man. Me and most of the other students often thought that he should have been teaching in a well-respected university somewhere, not slumming it somewhere in a public school, getting slowly eroded down by all of us council estate rejects doing our best to outsmart him, with weak attempts for attention. Solid, liquid, gas and plasma. These are the different states of matter. You know what some state and doesn't matter? This class. In a way, the kind of pushback he got from the majority of his students wasn't really surprising. It's a pretty narrow field of interest among people. Even just the word science is boring to a lot of people. And let's be fair, it's not exactly a field wherein women will be throwing themselves at you. Put it this way, if you told a room full of women that you're into science, you could save yourself the price of a dehumidifier. So he usually just taught the subject by the books, and that way most teachers do when they've had the joy kicked out of them by 20 years of dealing with little shit, and take something that's actually interesting and turn it into something drab and boring by making it more about doing chores than learning. I want you to read through pages 37 through 59 and write a 4-page essay on the privateer Edward Teach. Any questions? Yeah, if you're just going to tell us to read this book to ourselves every day, then tell me again why we need you. Principal's office, now. But though Mr. Crotty was guilty of this, I don't think it was because he didn't have a passion for it. I think it was because the level in which he was teaching was so basic, it bored him to tears. But one thing did excite the man, and that was a curious mind. When people would probe past a surface level lesson and ask him a more interesting question, solely out of curiosity, his face would light up, and he'd jump into action to water this young mind with food for thought, which is something me and my curious self got to witness firsthand with my first year with him. When doing a class on electricity, I stuck my hand up and asked, who invented electricity? To which he said, No, Ducky. The question you should be asking is, who discovered electricity? It may have seemed so insignificant then, but I honestly think his positive reaction to my teenage curiosity actually played a big part in me being reasonably smart today, despite absolutely sucking at my school life. Though, being honest, my smarts are a bit more sporadic. I can tell you the speed of light is about 300,000 kilometers per second, meaning in 1 second you could lap the earth 7.5 times. I can tell you sharks rarely get cancer, and I can tell you statistically a chihuahua is twice as likely to bite you than a pit bull, which also means Britney Spears is actually more gangster than me. But if you were to ask me what's 77 plus 33, I'd have my calculator open before you could even finish the question. Which, while we're on the topic, let me just take a second to say something to all my past math teachers who docked me marks for using the calculator, because you're not always going to have a calculator on you. Yeah? Well, who's laughing now? But I will say, there was a Lego on the carpeted floor that was our science lesson with Mr. Crotty. And this little dastardly ducko was an accomplice in putting it there, I'm afraid. Let me explain. As you can see, thanks to Rokata's lovely true-to-life character work, Mr. Crotty was a chunky man. Only for he wore a suit, Peter would have thrown him back into the ocean. Tell the truth, did you laugh at that, or did you immediately think of the caloric hole we're all going to have to dig ourselves out of at the end of this pandemic because, fuck it, who'll be looking at me? You know it's bad when your missus catches you crying because you can't even fit into your socks anymore. Now, one thing overweight people can't stand: That was the end of the sentence. Overweight people struggle to stand. So he did a lot of his lessons sitting down. So one day, while we were outside his class waiting for him to arrive, one of the lads calls me from inside the room. I look in and he says, "Let me know if there's somebody coming." Fair enough, I thought, thinking he was nicking some stationery or writing something on the board. Nope. What he actually does is bust out a couple of tubes of super glue and sprays them all over the cushion of the teacher's chair. And that's when I was like, oh shit. Sure enough, at that moment, Mr. Crotty starts coming up the hall. So we bail out of the room and try act normal. In Crotty trots, walks up to his desk, sits down, and doesn't react in the slightest. He has no idea. And what's worse is, he doesn't stand for the entire class. He was even still sitting when the class was over and we were leaving. I thought the glue had dried or something before he sat down, because we seem to have gotten away with it. Nope, wrong again. Because halfway through our next class, "Everybody empty your pockets now!" Thankfully, the lad who did it, who shall not be named because snitches get stitches, had dumped the empty tubes of super glue between classes, so we managed to get away with it. That being said, I have felt guilty about it ever since. It was very much a dick thing to do to such a nice teacher. So, Mr. Crotty, if you're out there, I'm sorry. I owe you a pint, a new pair of pants, and considering the amount of glue used, some wheels for that chair that's been attached to you these last 18 years. So I have this friend called John who I've known for quite a long time. We went to primary school together, and as luck would have it, we had a lot of the same classes in secondary school too. Now, when we were in secondary school, I started to notice something about John. There was something off about him that for years I couldn't quite figure out. He seemed to have spades of confidence around women, all the while myself and every other fella at the time were struggling to even speak to women. "Hi, Ducky." "Oh, hi, Kelly." Ah, god damn it. But not John. He approached women with a pimp limp and the arrogance of a flavoured Johnny. And what baffled us even more was, the girls were not one bit put off by this. They'd just pop a floaty on him and invite him into the sea of flange, while the rest of us angrily looked on trying to figure out the secret to this disproportional female attraction he was getting. He was soft-spoken, didn't play sports, wasn't particularly competitive. He was kinda the opposite of what girls at the time were into. I know that's kinda meaningless to the younger generation. Oh, Christ. What in the pubic mushroom afro Bart Simpson beat the devil out of me Bob Ross shit is that here? Wow. Oh, I just had one of them I'm really out of touch moments. Oh, God, let me redo that. I know the hunky alpha male is meaningless to the younger generation, considering trends change over time. Actually, let's see what the modern hunk is to young girls these days. Huh. You know what? Good for them. It's about time the Asian lads had their time to shine and bring something to the table. Because they certainly can't bring anything under the table, am I right? I know. Low-hanging fruit. But mine hangs lower. Anyway, back on topic. Now, I suspect that the reason he was so good with the ladies was because he took a lot of the same classes as them, he lived quite near a few of them, and he hung out with a lot of them outside of the school. So I assumed this was the reason. Spend enough time with women, you're bound to build up a little bit of a rapport with them. But it turned out this wasn't actually the reason, as I was about to find out one fateful day. So, we were chilling outside the career guidance counsellor's room, trying desperately to think of any occupation to suggest to the woman for when she brings you in and asks these 15-year-olds, "What is it you'd like to do for the rest of your life?" Like we were spending all our free time laying in the bed thinking, sure, boobs and skateboarding is great and all, but is there any other financial benefits to becoming a hedge fund execution trader outside of the basic €80,000 salary? And then suddenly, along she comes, one of the hottest girls in the school, Neve. Oh man, I'd love to hold her boobs. I mean books. No, I was right the first time. Yeah, she's some ride. That's when it hit me. Wait, say that again? She's some ride. Huh, that explains it. Explains what? Nothing, not important. In that moment it clicked for me, because hearing John express interest like that in a girl sounded wrong to me. Turns out I always subconsciously knew, but I didn't know that I knew. John is gay. It's the reason why he was able to talk to all the girls so casually, and how they all welcomed him in so easily. They wanted fashion tips. I don't even think that he knew at the time, because it wasn't until about 6 years later at his 21st he came up to me and said, "Ducky, I don't know if you heard, but I've actually come out as gay." Yeah, I knew you were gay before you did, lad. Anyway, where's the cake? So we're in our technical graphics class, or tech graph, as we called it, because between video games, underage drinking and living in constant fear of being the last one of your mates to lose your virginity, we simply didn't have the time to finish words. Hey Ducky. Sorry John, I can't talk now. I have to take on the Elite Four, steal a nagging of vodka from Savage Value, and awkwardly stand next to Claire in the hall to see if that'll make her suddenly want to sleep with me. I mean, you could always just talk to her. Please, John. This is best left to the experts. So while we were in our tech graph class, one of the lads, Paddy, sticks his hand up and asked the teacher if he could go see the school nurse because he wasn't feeling particularly well. Of course, like most teachers, she assumed this was a ploy to get out of class, and given it was only about 10 minutes left in her class, she told him that he can go after, and if he's feeling really unwell, he can just rest his head on the table. About 30 seconds later, this turned out to be a bad call because Paddy lifts his head looking very unwell indeed, and throws up about a gallon of putrefied chunky vomit all over his table. Now, this was quite a spectacle in and of itself, but it sounded awful off to me because I didn't see it happen initially from my viewpoint, but I heard it, and it sounded like this. I distinctly heard 2 splashes, but only 1 vomit, and suddenly it clicked. See, as I mentioned, this was a tech graph class, which is a class about drawing graphics, be they logos or shapes or designs, that kind of thing. And in order to make it easier for all of us to draw, all the tables were slanted towards us, meaning when Paddy vomited on his table, the table very generously poured the vomit back onto his lap and onto the floor, which is bad enough on its own, but all the extra turbulence from the splashing aerated the smell, so it filled the room instantly, to the point where we're all getting secondhand sinus burns from the acidic vapours. So I suppose if there's a lesson to take away from this, it's 1, never ask for permission to vomit, just f***ing run. And 2, if your student asks to leave the class for the bathroom or the nurse, it's best to give them the benefit of the doubt, because if it backfires, you'll be spending a few hours trying to air out your classroom. So that's it, another school stories in the bag, and I hope you found it so funny you did a slight sharp exhale out your nose. If you want to see more school related stories, I'll link another video that I've done on this down in the description, where you can find all my links to all my other lovely stuff, like my podcast, merch and Patreon. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will catch you lads and ladies in the next one.